Hello and a very good evening to everyone joining me on this Newsline Facebook Live. It's been over 9 weeks of the standoff with China, and even now there are no signs of abating. Yesterday, Indian Prime Minister Modi was in Ladakh, and it was a clear signal that the standoff is going to continue and India is not going to back down. Now, India's sovereignty and territorial integrity is at stake here, and India has given out a strong message that we are not going to back down. This standoff is going to continue. Clearly, at this point, a quick response would be something that could put India into trouble as well, which is why it could be it could be something that India needs to look at before taking any crucial decision. Now, a few experts have already said that this standoff could continue well into the winter as well, and these are signs of worry as well, but extremely important for the country as well. There are a few options that India has currently. We are going to take a look at that. Experts will also be joining us on this panel to discuss more on what are the options that India has and which is the best option that India can use as of now. Let's introduce famed ex-diplomat Partha who is joining us. Many thanks for joining us, Mr. Partha. Firstly, looking at how things are moving as of now, what do you think are the options that India currently have, and what is the best option that India can take?
Thank you so much. The best option, obviously, is to continue our dialogue at all the three levels. That is, one level is at the military level, which is going on. The second level is at the political level, where our Foreign Minister, Dr. Jaishankar, had with the Foreign Minister of China. And thirdly, we also have a mechanism to resolve certain disputes whenever it happens, the border disputes, at the National Security, National Security Advisor, and also they have a mechanism. So all the three dialogues are going on, and also our ambassador, Mr. Vikram Misri in Beijing, he is also having a regular dialogue with the government of China. And I think this is the best option that at this moment that we should have, and that the best way to resolve the problems.
Okay. But, let's look at a few options that India has. You're saying that's the best option, but that might be something that India is here on this for the long haul, it clearly looks like. So that doesn't seem to be working. The talks are going on at diplomat levels as well, but it doesn't seem to be working. So looking at a few other options that are available, would you say that the option to evict the Chinese by force and, destroying whatever they've built in the area would be an option that India could be looking at?
See, what is happening at this moment, what is happening is that, what is currently going on is much different than what has happened in many, many years and decades. Currently, there are thousands of, according to the information, there are thousands of troops, Chinese troops, at the border, at also what you call certain gray areas. So eviction is not a possibility, and it should not be resorted to, because that will be the last resort. That means if you go for the force, then there will be a war, certainty of war. And I don't think either India or China, either of us, would like to have a war. So I don't think that should be the option. But what I would like to suggest at this moment is that if you recollect, in 2017, we had a standoff, a similar standoff, but not to this scale, but at a much lesser scale, at Doklam, which was a disputed area between Bhutan and China. At that time also, it looked as if China did so much of psyops, and they said that, India is not big for us, and China has got all the capabilities, and we will ensure that whatever we want, we will do it, and we'll go ahead and build that road which they wanted. But after 73 days and after continuous dialogue, they backed off. Finally, they wanted a face saving, but once the face saving was given, they backed off. Okay. So that is the reason why we should be hopeful that we should not get into either a kind of an forced eviction, which will lead to a war, or even kind of a limited war, which I don't think at this stage we should be considering such an option at all.
Okay.
But what is definitely possible at this stage is, number one, is yesterday Prime Minister Modi went to the border and then categorically said that these expansionist policies will not be accepted.
Yes.
India would like to have peace, but that doesn't mean that we will kind of give up whatever our rights are. So he has sent a clear message that India will stand up. Secondly, what was India decades ago, it is not the India today. India today is strong and internationally it has got the backing, and what it is claiming is not somebody else's territory, it just wants that LAC should be maintained. So that is what is going on. And apart from that, this economic messages that we are sending, that is banning of certain apps and stopping some of the procurements from China, because we import almost like $73 billion worth of goods from China, goods and services. So that is going to show. So China should understand that they are against a country which is powerful, which has got an international support, and which is in its own capable and determined to ensure that they will not give up their interests. So once they know, China will slowly understand they may not have any other option and they cannot continue this for long. And once the thing, it goes further and goes into winter, see, what we are trying to do is these are the areas of very high altitude, 6,000, 7,000 meters above sea level. In these places, even for people to just stay there becomes difficult. It is not only for India, but also for China. So I think China will understand that once India takes a firm stand, they will slowly come to realize that this is not something which they can go and win. So I think they should come back to the kind of the dialogue to compromise. And as they have been saying, already they are saying that we should have a gradual de-escalation process. And I think that the de-escalation process has to happen, and then they should understand.
Right, but talks are going on the same lines as well, Mr. Parthasarathy. And like you mentioned, I'll go back to what you said, a limited war that is limited in terms of geography or the location, that is not something that is likely to happen. It would be only at a much later stage, but it is something that both the countries will avoid as well, isn't it? Because it will not stay a limited war for a very long time. It has the threat of blowing mud out of control as well.
Exactly. That is the reason. And once you start a limited war, how do you limit? And there will be so many misunderstandings, there will be confusions and miscalculations, and everybody will try to prove something. So the force is not an option, and that should not be resorted to. However we say, whatever we say, but force, whether limited or even the slightest use of force, should not be resorted to by either side. I don't think that is, we are definitely, we are far away from that stage. And at this moment, it is simply a dialogue at all the three levels.
Okay. There are a few areas along the LAC as well that are not strongly defended by China. Do you think the Indian army or the Indian side will be looking at taking over that side to ensure that the negotiations are on par with what's happening currently?
You see, this kind of a tactic has been used before, but the thing is that should happen when things are happening. You know, like when the skirmish took place, at that time, if we had taken that, that could have been used as a leverage. But at this moment, you see, there are three places where the problem areas are happening at this moment. One is that Tangsong Lake itself, where we share the lake. You know, we share part of it and they share part of it. But the only thing what they have done now is from, instead of staying at finger 8, what we call the finger 8, so they have come up to finger 4. So that is a grey area in which they have got it, and they will have to go back. That is one area which is a very important thing now. But much more important to us is the Galwan River itself. In Galwan River, the LAC, line of actual control, was fairly well marked, and there was no dispute or kind of a confusion in that area. But where they have already come and they have established themselves, that is the second area. And of course, the third area is the hot springs, but that is not of great significance and they are not going to gain much out of it. But the point is, at this moment, after the discussions have started and now the current situation is, it is not for India to go and occupy certain areas where Chinese patrolling or the support system is weak and then use it. I think that time has passed. It should have happened, almost 2 to 3 weeks back when the skirmish took place, when they came in. At that time, if India had occupied certain other areas, probably it could have happened. But at this moment, I think that possibility is much less.
Okay. So, of course, like you mentioned, the skirmish between India and China is not something new, but it had been non-fatal until now. It was only on June 15th that there was a huge change like this, which calls for a lot of change in action as well. But this might not be the time to take such a strong action, because that might be a big strategic folly, which brings us to, of course, the option that India would be taking now, that is to hold the line and then negotiate, which is currently happening, isn't it?
Exactly. See, the only difference now is earlier when the skirmishes and other thing took place, people were there, 40 people, 50 soldiers, 100, 200, something like that. But whereas today you are seeing 5,000 people, and in certain areas they have that armored personal carriers, and there are some, they have occupied certain heights which are not in the interest of India, and also, possibility of an artillery usage and etc. It is there. So at any cost, I don't think limited or larger or whatever it is, use of force or use of military muscle power is definitely not this thing. The current situation that, as you rightly said, is that Indian forces should hold their whatever they are there, they should hold it there, and they say definitely not. No, nobody will be allowed to get in, to make any further ingress into this area. So that they should stand firmly. And secondly, please understand, yesterday when Prime Minister Mr. Modi went there to the border and then made a categorical political statement that no, we will be there and we will stand. I think China has got the message clearly. And if you heard the Chinese spokesperson later, he also said neither should the side should do anything that will escalate the situation. So we should start looking at the de-escalation process.
Right.
So I think China will slowly get the message, and that's what we should continuously hold the line wherever we are, and at the same time send a firm message to China that look, we are not backing away, and neither we are going to give up whatever our rights are, and wherever we had to patrol, we will continue to do that. That's what the message that has to go. But force is not an option, in my view.
Okay, all right. You mentioned face saving as well for China. It's extremely crucial, and also considering this comes at a time like this when China is already in the eye of a storm because of coronavirus and the lack of transparency. So at a time like this, it's extremely crucial for China as well to ensure that there's some face saving. The entire world is watching. So would you say diplomatically as well, it would be better for India to ensure that we don't go on the aggressive, at the same time also ensure that China can save face, because then they might back down?
Absolutely, for countries like China, face saving is a very, very important thing. At this moment also, if they have taken this adventurous step, it is also basically because, see, because of before the coronavirus, the trade war was going on between China and US. And after that, once the corona started, it's not only the US, but most of the European countries started shunning China and then kind of blaming China. So within internally also, the position of Premier Xi Jinping is also something where they want to show to their people that, look, we are doing something, we are very strong, and we are the world power, and we can take whatever decision that we would like to take. That is one. And secondly, more important, we should understand is, once on August 5th last year, Ladakh was made into a union territory. The moment you do union territory, obviously the Aksai Chin area which China occupied in 1962 war, that also becomes part of the Ladakh union territory. So once they knew that, China had to do something to show that India should not go further, and then they should be on the defensive. That's one of the reasons that they have done, and they want to divert the attention of the people. So they want to show to their people that, yes, what we are doing is very strong. So obviously, certain amount of face saving will be required. For example, when it happened in the Doklam, it was when both the forces were eyeball to eyeball. I think India, if I am correct, India withdrew 2 hours before China withdrew. So China was able to say, because India withdrew, we withdrew.
Yeah.
So something like that, there has to be a kind of a diplomatic face saving that needs to be provided, and I think that something like that should be accommodated once the dialogue continues and comes to a stage where they agree to really withdraw the whole thing.
Okay, okay, but would you say it's going to be a long time until that happens? When do you see the standoff easing out? Especially looking at the fact that yesterday the Prime Minister also went there, the strong message that he gave out as well. Now, of course, China has also said that India should also not indulge in any kind of aggression. So, looking at the statements that have been issued by both the countries, how long do you think this standoff is going to continue?
It is very difficult for anybody to predict when exactly such things are going to be resolved. If you look at Doklam, that took 73 days. So this also can go for several weeks, but I would feel that this should be resolved before what they call the winter sets in. It should happen well before that, because it is not going to benefit either side if they get into that kind of a situation. So I do hope that the way things are happening, I support, but this time it's much different
Yeah,
than what
I wanted to
had
come to
happened
that. This is very
before. We should
different from what
understand.
happened in Doklam as well. So, of course, we can draw comparisons, but this time it's extremely different because there have been fatalities as well.
Correct.
So, are we looking at a point of no return?
No, no, no. There is nothing like point of no return in anything. There is not a single issue that cannot be resolved. And please understand, both India and China are important countries in world today, and both have to prove themselves that they are responsible powers. So
Yes.
particularly China, which tries to claim that they are among the superpowers today, it is also important for China to send a message across the world that they are a responsible country.
True.
So because of that, I don't think they can be irrational. They should go ahead and they will have to resolve this issue. There is no question of a point of no return. I don't think such a thing will happen.
Okay, all right. Many thanks, Mr. Parthasarthi, for taking out time to join us with your expertise. Of course, that's a word. We can't really tell now when the standoff is going to end. It's going to take a long time, but it's an extremely crucial time for India and China as well. It has been called a strategic rivalry as well, but this is a kind of standoff that India has not seen before, because this time around, the aggression has been completely unprecedented. Talks are still going on, but this is going to take perhaps a few weeks or perhaps a few months as well. But the message that Prime Minister Modi has given out is that India is ready for any situation. Yes, we want peace, but if the need be, India is also ready to escalate the tensions with China. It's going to be extremely crucial to see what's going to happen next. Of course, it's going to be a very daunting strategic predicament as well for the Prime Minister, and the coming days talks will go on at the army level as well as the diplomat levels to ensure that the standoff between the two countries eases out. We'll keep you posted on that. Thank you so much for joining us on this Facebook Live. I'll see you tomorrow.